Welcome to Open Heart Brain Surgery, where the guest picks a piece of media that they love and we talk about it. New episodes come out every 3 weeks or so and are available on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and all the other places. I'm your host, Eric Whitaker, and today we're talking to Gabi Vanek from Death Bag, and we're talking about the movie Scenes from a Marriage by Ingmar Bergman. And actually, we did the first interview about it, and Gabi hadn't seen it in a little while. Then she did see it and wanted to do a little bit of a follow-up interview. So this episode's going to have 2 parts, essentially, kind of the longer part of the interview and then a little bit of a postscript at the end. So that's how we're doing it. And welcome, Gabi.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's okay. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah. How you been? It's been a while.
Yeah, I've been hiding out mostly. I was just out of town for work for 2 weeks, and this the top of the year. I'm like recovering from surgery, so I'm just at home. How about you?
Yeah, hiding out. Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where have you been? But I haven't been out either, so I wouldn't know. Scenes from a Marriage. Hopefully, I watched the right thing. It was only 3 hours long.
Okay. Oh.
I didn't watch the 6-hour version of it.
Yeah. So Ingmar Bergman is my favorite director, and during my recovery, I've had to be immobile for about 2 hours every day. So I decided that I would go through all of his filmography in chronological order.
Wow.
And I'm still not at Scenes from a Marriage yet, but I'm on number 29 right now. Is I think Hour of the Wolf.
Wow.
But regardless, Scenes from a Marriage has been my favorite movie for the longest time, Bergman or otherwise.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question, actually, is when did you discover this movie, and at what age, and what drew you to it in the first place?
So I must have been 16 or 17-ish. So at least I know, I saw Bergman when I was 15 or 16. So I'm assuming Scenes from a Marriage was 17, but it could have been 19, early college. But I was already deep in. I don't know really at the time what may have drawn it to me, but I think when I think about it, often what I like about him, but Scenes from a Marriage in particular, is that it's pretty much a slice of life. Plot, no plot. You're just seeing people interact in space and with each other as a character study. And I think even back then, I was much more interested in seeing how characters move through space than an actual plot. And just watching the disintegration of this marriage, but also the mundanities of them being in the kitchen and then looking at each other with disgust. Yeah. Is I don't know. There's always been something about it. And he writes very naturalistic text. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it was rough. I got to be honest. Yeah. It was brutal. This is going to sound terrible. Not only have I never seen this, but I looked through the filmography, and I don't know if I've seen any Bergman. Oh. And I know that's terrible. I've obviously heard about his films forever, and I don't know why I just haven't gotten to them. And honestly, when this first started, I was like, oh, this is going to be difficult. This is very long. And because it starts with an interview with a therapist, I believe, right? And they're sort of being catty with each other, but still kind of loving. And it's it goes on for quite a while. And I didn't quite understand what I was seeing yet within the first, honestly, maybe the first 45 minutes of it. I was kind of what is this? And but yeah, you said that the writing's real naturalistic, and I picked that up too. It's almost amazing that this is written dialogue, because they're just talking for so long, and there are cuts, but there's parts where I would say it pushes 5 to 7 minutes of pure dialogue between the characters.
Well, he, Bergman actually comes from the theater as a director. So it's funny watching his earlier films, the stuff from the late 40s into the 50s. It's still very theatrical and staged. And as you start getting like deeper and deeper into his filmography, and like Scenes from a Marriage being like the perfect example, is just like, oh no, we are just in a space. There is no scene change. We were just walking through. It is also very funny that this is your first Bergman movie.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do all of the movies feel this way, or?
So I think there's a Godard quote that's like, I heard there's an Ingmar Bergman film playing tonight. I don't feel like being depressed. Like,
Yeah.
something like that. No, yes and no. Like he has like a couple comedies in there, which are like funny in a like dour sort of way. And then like, but a lot of his like, see, like one movie I would, oh my goodness, this is so exciting for me. I never get to talk about Bergman. Like, you know, his classic film is The Seventh Seal, right? Playing chess, you know, against death and
Right.
and that whole thing. And it's again, still, it's very quiet, because you'll notice that he doesn't really use non-diegetic sound, and that like becomes much more evident, you know, the more we progress. But there is some non-diegetic sound in The Seventh Seal, but like it's just so quiet, like you almost don't even notice when music starts to play. And it's just like, it's a character study, it's interesting, takes place in the Middle Ages. But then the like, you know, classic Bergman is Persona, right? That's like the one that I think most people start with is Persona, with Ullman in it, actually. And she basically doesn't speak the entire movie.
Yeah, that one's been in my watch list for a long time, mostly because David Lynch cited it as one of his favorite movies. And so,
Oh, really?
And a lot of people make comparisons from that to David Lynch movies where there's like doppelgangers or counterparts and things like that. I've been meaning to watch it for years.
I hadn't watched it in years, and when I rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, I was like, no, this is killer. There's B.B. Anderson does this monologue that's like exceedingly sexually explicit, and it's like she's just sitting there saying it while Liv Ullman like just looks at her. It's very strange. So even though that's like definitely more of like a psychological thriller, it's less mundane than Scenes from a Marriage. He still has this way of getting the actors to interact with each other in these very passive ways that I think is very intrinsic to all of his films.
It seems very realistic, though, in that sense. Like when people share space in reality, they're not just continuously talking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes there are monologues. Sometimes you are just listening to someone express themselves. And that definitely came through in the movie. And it made me wonder, because it was subtitled, and do you have any idea of the general consensus of the translations, of if they're accurate?
You know, that's a good question, because Bergman spoke English, so I'm not totally sure how much influence he had on some of the subtitle translations, but I've never read anything that was like, no, this does not work. So I can only assume that even if he didn't do the direct translations, that he wasn't opposed to them.
Yeah, because there's some very poetic phrasing throughout the film. And yeah, I always just wonder with translation if that's coincidence, or, you know, or if it was written that way and this is the direct translation. But yeah, there were all kinds of statements. And it's funny to think of someone seeing this when they're 16 years old, because watching it as, you know, a middle-aged person who's married and has been for a while, it was like there were things that they explored in the movie that I really do think are intrinsic to that situation. And that made it kind of difficult at times. My wife and I started watching it together, but then it got too late last night. And so I'm really glad that's how it worked out, as I watched the rest of it this morning. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could watch it and not feel kind of uncomfortable if you're with your spouse. Yeah.
Yeah. I yeah, I could imagine as an unmarried person how that could work because he is very good at like again like this like realism of like the needling and the mundane, and that's always what has appealed to me about many of his films is the mundane and just watching people move through space. I know I said that already, but assuming I was, you know, about 17 when I saw this, you know, obviously there's the adults having an episode, right? But, you know, I was a pretty shy kid. And so watching people just like interact and collapse was fascinating, especially having not at that age like been through a relationship collapse like that before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It would seem, I don't know, it seems to me that it would almost feel like a spectacle of sorts.
Yeah. Well,
I
and it
don't
is
know.
very voyeuristic, right? And actually, you know, come to think about it, like a lot of his movies, you are a voyeur because it is so mundane.
Yeah, it felt that way. So much so that it wasn't until about halfway through where I actually started to notice the shots. Like it was
Yeah.
so rich with character and dialogue and the interaction that I wasn't even thinking about the fact I'm watching a movie.
I mean, that's amazing. And Sven Nykvist, I'm 90% sure he was the cinematographer on it. He is like, when you think of a lot of the major Bergman films, he is the look of Bergman. There's Gunnar Fischer too, but he's a bit earlier. But I think the first Sven Nykvist film I remember of his, I think, is Sawdust and Tinsel. And watching it, I was like, oh, this is a Bergman movie. Like you can just see it, which is really, really interesting because he uses like pretty much the same team or a theme and variations of the same team in all of his films. They're like chamber players, essentially.
Yeah, I love the shots. It teetered between further away shots that encapsulated both the characters talking. Honestly, the movie's nearly 3 hours long, and I would say 2 hours and 57 minutes of that is these two people on the
Yeah.
screen, you know? And so that's pretty intense. You do start to feel a little claustrophobic. And then to add on to that, the other type of shot that's very common is extreme close up and
Yeah.
holding a long time.
Yeah. So Persona is when he really first starts doing that. And it is really quite uncomfortable. Like, I can't imagine being the type of person who would ever want a camera that close to my face.
But I mean, it does put you there. It puts you in the moment. I don't, it almost has like a cinema verite style to it every once in a while. Like,
Yeah.
not that it's out of focus or shaky, it's none of that, but just like how things move and how close you are to what's happening.
Yeah. Every so often, I know there's the use of a handheld camera. I don't necessarily think in Scenes from a Marriage, but I know it had been known to happen in some of his stuff in the 60s.
So, yeah, what immediate impact did this have on you personally? But then also, we can talk about how it affected your creative process as well.
I've actually been thinking about this a lot, so I'm so glad that you had reached out to me and in this perfect time of my re-Bergmaning. Yeah, I mean, again, pretty much all of the media that I like, I would say like 85%, is very slice of life. Like things just happening, like, you know, even like comics and things I'm delighted by. And so I would even say, like, the impact it had on me is the things that you can find in the mundane that are interesting. And then I take that, like, on a level to, like, how I listen to music or, like, the music I create is you can find sound in anything. You know, I was once called a serial killer because I drive without music when I'm on the interstate. Yeah, I just don't. Like, 7-hour drive, I just don't listen to music 95% of the time. And it comes like down to like absolute versus programmatic music, and I'm definitely like an absolute music person where it's like it doesn't it can just be aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have to mean anything. Mm-hmm. It can just exist in space. And I really take that to heart a lot, is it can just exist. Like, I've recently been doing a set, which I'm sure people hate, of just playing E for like 15 minutes with like a drone that has E at like different frequencies. So, you know, you're bringing it above and below, so you get beating, but it's like 15 minutes of that. And I played it at a day party. And like, parenthetically, I hated that set because I found out that my cassette player was playing it a whole step sharp. Oh. But yeah, it really, I learned so much about electrical engineering after that. But I've played it since then. And there was a kid who was there, and like in the middle of the set, he just walked out. And I was like, on the one hand, I was delighted, but also I thought it was really like funny. But it's like, the E is the most unstable note on the bassoon, the middle E. And so there's so many weird things that you can find within that E, whether you're pitching it up, pitching it down, whether you're trying to even use like a false fingering or find alternate fingerings and harmonics for it. And so to me, like, I suppose you could say it's a bit self-indulgent in the same way that you could say that Slice of Life is a bit self-indulgent, or like The Long Take. But I think there's intrigue and always things that you can find in that, or things to listen to, or in the case of Bergman and the mundane, things to see.
Yeah, there's more going on than just the people and the words, right? Yeah. And you really pick up on that.
Yeah, I think that's why that movie has always been such a monolith in my life, because it is so all encapsulating of nothingness. It's just like you are watching people argue for technically 6 hours. And I know there have been, like, I never saw A Marriage Story, that one that came out with Scarlett Johansson and what's his face? Adam Driver, is that him?
That's it. Yep.
I never saw it. I kind of forgot about it, but I had no interest in seeing it, but I'm certain it was influenced. HBO did a bullshit retell of it that Liv Ullmann even gave her blessing on, but it sucked. I didn't finish watching it. Watching Jessica Chastain try to channel Liv Ullmann was just like really tedious and annoying. Mm-hmm. But it came out, in like 73, something like that. And to me, I guess maybe I'm perpetually stuck in the 1970 was 30 years ago. But it's like, to me, it was still, I think, very applicable as it was. Things really haven't changed that much. Like, she was still in a position of power, even back then, but they had kind of switched it around where the husband becomes more of a house husband, and she's the one who leaves this time instead of. Oh. But I was just like, to me, 1973, and especially like Swedish society, did not feel far enough away for this to warrant a retelling, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, so, and why change it anyway?
Yeah, I just didn't understand why. Like, I guess, like, oh, we can flip the roles now that, we're 30 years later. Yeah, to me, it was a waste. And maybe it was good. I didn't bother to read reviews. I only gave it a try because of the Liv Ullmann thing. And then I was watching it. I'm like, no. And I just was like, I don't need to watch a bad version,
Have you watched the 3-hour cut as well then? What
Yes.
are the big differences?
I don't remember quite all the big differences, but there's a lot of the dialogue that's just cut. So there are just things that, like, I talked about the mundane, but they're just like scenes. I think one of the first things that I recall actually that's cut is that they're at a dinner party. And essentially they are with another couple who seem to have it together a bit more, but do like a little bit of a like hee coquettishness. And like, meanwhile, Liv Ullmann and Erland Josephson were like slowly like melting down. And I guess I haven't watched the 3-hour version in a while, but I don't think that scene is in it. It's like the scene pretty much immediately after the interview.
And in the 3-hour, the next scene is they have guests over to their house, a couple, they're friends,
Yeah.
and they're in real bad shape, screaming at each other by the end of the scene. So if there was a previous scene where there was someone doing better than them, then it's becomes sort of a parallel to the next scene, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and see, now I'm worried that maybe they were yelling the whole time, but in my recollection, it's that there was like it wasn't a shit show with the other couple. But I'll know, I guess, in a like, probably by next week when I rewatch it.
Well, that scene, I wouldn't say they were like screaming or anything, but I mean, and this is something I was going to bring up anyway. That first scene after the interview feels very much like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I think the rest of the movie has that sort of really clever cattiness to it, too.
I've never seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, so maybe I have to add it to my to-watch list. But cattiness is a great word, because it's all these, like, they're never like these violent outbursts. I mean, they get into some like heavy arguments, and there's the scene, I guess, where he hits her, but much later. Oh man, yeah. Well, okay, yeah. So he hits her, but otherwise it's fine. But a lot of them are just like snipes at each other and like belittling, and like because he's a professor, how she like tries to make him feel stupid. Like I noticed that was like the small belittlings that go back and forth, and then like him kind of like giving her shit for being a career-oriented woman, and they have a kid, and yet he's still the one that walks away. It's like I said, I think I'm just perpetually delighted by watching them interact.
Definitely. I mean, okay. So the scene where he tells her he's leaving.
Yeah.
That was the turning point for me. And I know I watched the half-ass version of it basically, but like I just started crying. I was like, this is one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen. And her performance in it is so sympathetic, and like she's just trying to hold on as well as she can. It's rough. It is rough.
Yeah, she's great. Like almost everything that Liv Ullmann is in. I don't think this is a line from Scenes from a Marriage. It might be like Face to Face or something, but it's Is My Grief Your Secret Pleasure?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't in Scenes from a Marriage, it definitely could have fit there, but it's a great line that she delivered.
Yeah, it was cool. There were so many things. She says at one point this phrase, I'm going to screw up how to say it, but fait accompli?
Oh, fait accompli.
Yeah. And I didn't know what that meant and looked it up, and I was like, that is a really cool term and idea. Yeah. I've never even thought of that before. So
new band.
Yeah, right. But one of my notes is just, I hate this dude so much.
Yeah.
And I know everyone involved in the movie, no one's perfect, right? But he's just he seems to have so much disdain. And maybe that builds in the longer version. It seems a little not out of nowhere, because I understand the idea is this is building over time,
right?
But it really felt like he was just laying into her a lot.
Yeah, in the long version, it's definitely like one of these. But it's like if you hate the actor like playing the character, they must be doing a killer job,
right?
Like, yeah, Erland Josephson. He's not. He like appears in some Bergman stuff, but like I always think of him with this movie.
Where in your experiencing the Bergman films, where did this fall?
So it was pretty early, actually, in my like young viewing, because as I've been going through this like timeline thing, I realized I'd actually already seen like a good chunk of his filmography. But I remember it being pretty early on, and it was just very striking immediately. I think I may have even seen it before The Seventh Seal. So I would say I was already into Bergman when I discovered him, and I was like a teenage snob, and so it was just like a very straight shot from whatever else. I never did the French New Wave thing. I know a lot. I went more with Scandinavian modernism.
At age 16.
Yeah, Yeah, I was such a snobby bitch.
That's great. You mentioned the scene, it was while they were signing their divorce papers, where there is some violence. I don't know. I was thinking it kind of goes both ways, but I think it's pretty lopsided. But the entire scene, it's this like a tug of war, like a struggle between like forcing your will onto someone physically, right?
Yeah,
But also like the sexual aspect of it, and then still trying to kind of hurt each other and exploit each other. Like
yeah,
it's really confusing to watch emotionally.
yeah.
And I thought that was so cool because I think that's what they're supposed to be feeling, right? So it's like you directly feel that.
Yeah, and I mean, he's so like, I mean, obviously, like the actors are doing most of the work, but Bergman is so good at getting them and like their oh shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Their compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they're really like they play off of each other. They have chemistry the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really good at making sure that his pairings have some level of chemistry. Too, even when they are in the throes of domestic violence.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that they had chemistry since they like hated each other the whole time, but like it felt real. Like they felt like people you were watching as like a documentarian, sort of.
Yeah, it's funny because I think they represent, I mean, it's literally stages through the marriage, right? But I
Yeah,
think that their acting shows that. Like, I think in the
yeah,
beginning, there's a lot of smiles, there's a lot of
yeah.
coyness. And by the end, actually, by the end, we're kind of back where we started, right? Which I don't know. I just want your take on that element of it. Like, in the broad scope of things, like, what do you think is trying to be said with this movie?
So, funnily enough, there is a bit of a sequel.
Hmm.
That's one of his last films, and I don't know if he technically directed it. And I haven't seen this one in forever. Also, hold on. Like the name is, I know what the name is in Swedish, but I don't remember what it is in English. So hold on. Yeah, okay. Sarah Band that came out in 2003. I think it's his last film. It's like there's like a Swedish TV version which is 107 minutes, and the theatrical release is about 2 hours or so. I have not watched Sarah Band in maybe at least 15 years, but it brings back the characters of Johan and Marianne. So I don't remember it, but there is a sequel. So I don't quite remember if, again, because we go back to the beginning, he technically hasn't moved back to Sweden, right? And so between the end of the film and the sequel, I don't know if he moves back to the United States or if they finally are just like in their sort of like honeymoon reunion and then they'll just hate each other again. But you know, Bergman is all about the cycle in general. So I'm not sure. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. It's funny because there's not much hidden in the movie, right? But there's a lot of ideas that flow underneath and through. So like they didn't really have much physical chemistry when they were married.
Yeah.
But originally him and then both of them kind of spread out and found other ways to experience that, right? But then by the end, they're having an affair from their new spouses with each other, and they're very excited about it. And so, like, it just felt like if I had to synthesize what I felt during it was marriage is mundane, marriage is terrible, ending a marriage is terrible, but if you're not married, you can get along really well. I don't know.
I mean, maybe.
That's pretty depressing, though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was wild by the end. I was just like, so where are we now?
Well, I think about the scene in her office where it's just like, oh, okay, I see where we are now.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. You've really made me want to rewatch it, but it's not in order, so I have to wait a little bit to watch it because there are so many little things, especially given the 6 hour. Like you've essentially, like I said, it's a lot of dialogue that is just cut, and it's more of the even more mundane dialogue. But every episode is only an hour, so it's not as much of a slog as you think it could be. It's not like you're sitting through a 6 hour movie. It's like, oh, I've binge watched this horribly depressing Swedish drama. Yeah, no, that is very funny. I don't know, maybe you'll have to watch Sarah Band.
I think I will. I think I'll have to take a little break in between. It did make me want to watch his other movies, even though I realized that they're not all the same as far as like setting and ideas and characters and things. Like I would guess that The Seventh Seal is pretty different than 1973 Sweden. But thinking of how this movie feels and thinking about how that could be applied to other things has me really interested. So I'll probably go on to The Seventh Seal soon. Yeah.
I would say Seventh Seal and then Persona. Those are his two that I think people always think of. I mean, there are others, but I know like Persona is like, you were shown this in film school, you know, kind of thing. Because it is exceedingly creative and quite experimental in how it's shot. It's really great.
So I think we kind of touched upon this, but as far as music that you create, I'm trying to think of how to put this, because you sort of already did talk about it, but is it something that you keep returning to the well? You know, like, is it something that is constantly affecting what you create?
Yeah, like I said, I think the concept of just existing in nothingness influences like my creative practice so much. Always. And again, like I said, my listening practice, my like reading practice, one of my favorite comic series is called Berlin. It's so good. And it's just a series of narratives about the Weimar Republic. Like, sure, like the plot is existing in this space, not anything in particular, which I really appreciated. I mean, I even really like Gotham City Sirens because it's so fucking stupid that, you know, Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy are roommates. You know,
I've never read that. Yeah.
Yeah. Early 2000s, they've since done like other iterations of it, but the one in the early 2000s is just like girls being girls being girls being girls. You know, it's very silly. So, you know, it's a cape comic, so it does have like a plot, but again, you just have these characters as people. And I think with superheroes in particular, or villains in this case, it's actually much more interesting to see them as mundane. There's so many things to notice in quiet, and I find that all the time. And so I guess Scenes from a Marriage, whether it knew it or not when I was 17, even though I was already into like, you know, noisier and noisier music, at the time it probably didn't affect my listening, but as I've, you know, explored more and gotten older artistically, it's definitely like Scenes from a Marriage. The reason I like it so much is the reason I drive without music or write stories about two people getting coffee. You know, it's not like a show about nothing in the Seinfeld sense, right. But even Seinfeld I quite like, because it's just like that the Chinese restaurant. That is a brilliant episode. Uncomfortable and kind of annoying because the characters are also uncomfortable and annoying, but it's like, this is something that has happened. We are stuck in this space and we have to like interact through this space, and the plot being, when is our table going to be ready? But that's not a real plot point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're stuck there unless it's like the spectator who walked out of your show, right? Yeah.
I loved that. Like, you know, you make the jokes of wanting people to walk out when you play. But now that I know that the tape was playing a whole step above the note I was playing, there was probably like a triple level of discomfort, which is amazing. My goal isn't necessarily to make people walk out of my shows, but I'm delighted, again, that he did. But yeah, like maybe it is a bit navel gazy, but to me, again, like listening to like how imperfect like the E is really interesting. Like look at how we deconstruct it. Like the bassoon is acoustically imperfect. But in the same way, it's like I feel like a bunch of people have no interest in watching Scenes from a Marriage because it's 6 hours of nothing, in the same way that it's 15 minutes of a sine wave, you know.
For sure.
It's yeah, like it's like definitely like with Harsh Noise Wall, like I got into a Bonnier kick for a while, and I was just like, yes, excellent. This is what we're listening to now. Just pure static. But actually, if you listen to his stuff, there's some really interesting things like closely going on amidst the white noise. It's really cool. Like you'll hear like little synth patterns and things, but they're very hidden beneath. Again, like with, you know, any sort of slice of life film, but specifically Scenes from a Marriage, it's like you had mentioned coyness or like little smiles and then like slowly starting to denigrate each other while like Sven Nykvist like has a like long shot where you're just looking at them from the other room and like, or like the things that their silences are exceedingly loud and, you know, so I don't know if that totally answered your question or just turned into a bit of a rambling on I don't listen to anything.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was, I never get to talk about Bergman in a, you know, in this sort of way. So I had a good time.
Nice. Yeah, there were a lot of things that I didn't understand and probably went over my head, but it still affected me. It was a cool suggestion, and just thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too. Well, we'll just start it the way we did last time. Welcome, Gabi Vanek.
Yeah, I was wondering how you were going to do this, if it's like a postscript, because I don't know if we necessarily have to do the whole thing again, but I was like, man, our conversation might have become quite different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I jokingly said I was currently in my Bergman K-hole because I wound up watching 10 Bergman films in a row.
Nice.
And then I binge watched the series Scenes from a Marriage. And then a day or so later, watched the 3 hour version.
That's commitment.
Yeah, you know, I'm like, man, you know, some of his lines are really like punches in the gut. So you're like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be watching him back to back to back to back.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I mean, overall. And I can only imagine what the full miniseries is like compared to the movie. What are some major differences you noticed?
Well, the big thing actually about it is, you know, that I'll say for both is that sometimes I'm intimidated when I see a movie that's longer than 2.5 hours. And the film does not drag. Like, I couldn't believe it was over. And the series doesn't drag either. Like, it was very easy to be in that binge watch hold. But when we were talking about it, because I'd seen it so fresh, like I knew the series had more. But there are some like big, like gaping holes. And the first one actually that you noticed, you know, you have the interview scene. The interview is significantly longer in the series. And one thing that does happen is Erland Josephson steps out of the space for a bit. And there's a moment where Liv Ullmann is in the space and you see the interviewer snooping around. And she peeks into their bedroom and you see that it's kind of a disaster in there. And then she closes the door again. But early on, when Johann is, you know, like, oh, describe yourself. And he's like, oh, I'm sexy. We have all these things. And you see Liv Ullmann's face go like, and then it comes out later that like she does not enjoy sex with him at all. But it's like very subtle. Like you're not paying attention to it. But then there's a moment where, again, Erland Josephson is gone and it's just Liv Ullmann and the interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so how's it going? Like girl talk, Liv Ullmann is like, I don't really know what to say. It just kind of is. But like the interview actually feels quite truncated in that regard. But I think I think it's fun actually in the movie for it to be truncated, because the whole point of this series is to really just keep going and going and going and like exploring the mundane in a way that the film still needs to move you forward. So that's like kind of a big one. And the other really big scene that I did not remember that the film didn't do is Liv Ullmann was supposed to have an abortion. And there's a scene actually famously on the cover where they're sitting in bed together and she's like reading, has the glasses on. That is from the abortion scene where they're discussing, do I want to have an abortion? I think I kind of want to have the baby. Erland Josephson is like, I think it would be great. And then like but it's clear that she kind of wants it, but also doesn't. And in a lot of ways, it's really quite progressive in 1973 to be such a frank conversation on abortion, but it's also Sweden. So it's, and I was thinking about that a lot, is that even though, the 70s in the United States were, progressive and like women were in the workforce and all that, in Sweden, I felt like we were more in the perspective of today in terms of like how women can move through space. So that was just kind of something interesting to consider. But the scene where they're in bed is very lengthy. It's like almost the whole episode.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that awesome. I'm glad we did this second part. I think it adds a lot to it, because the first time we talked, I just couldn't get over how brutal it all felt. Like it's obviously a different kind of brutality, right? Like it's not the extreme gore, harsh noise wall version of anything. Like it is slow and deliberate in its brutality. And that's a whole different deal. So
it's like doom marriage is
right.
Like it's, it's like it's the subtle stuff that like gets me. Of course, like there's the dialogue, but I just keep thinking back to that interview scene where you just see Liv Ullmann be like when he's saying like that they have a good sex life, like it's just, it's so tiny.
It's tiny enough that it seems it wouldn't have been difficult to just leave it in, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like we got to cut this 2 seconds. That really,
right. Exactly.
Really fleshes out this idea, but it's got to go.
No, we can't talk about Swedish couple sex life. It's
right. I wonder if Bergman ever talked about the cuts and why it was made that way, or if he discussed American conservatism as an element of those choices,
I mean, I would wonder, and I'd almost be curious. I have I'm a bear head, really. I have like a bunch of Bergman books, but like he doesn't, at least in The Magic Lantern, he doesn't talk about it, which is kind of his like autobiography. But I do have this collection of interviews of his, and I read it forever ago, but I wonder if there's a Scenes from a Marriage interview in there. And I would just look and then email you so we don't have to do part 5.
Yeah, right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And
No, take it easy, Eric. Thank you.
Talk to you later. Yeah.
Bye.